Hi everyone, welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm Ariane Zurcher and I'm going to do a video about how to paint using the Caran markers that I really love, and I'm going to demonstrate it using both t-shirting and cheesecloth, as well as just some scraps of fabric. I think it was an old shirt of my husband's. I'm not actually really sure what the content is. I think it might be cotton. It doesn't really matter. You can use anything. I use scraps of stuff, old t-shirts that I don't wear, or really anything, if you have some linen lying around. It can be material that you've bought or discarded clothing, whatever. Anyway, painting with Caran and also Inktense, and showing the difference between the two and how I do it. And with both, you can get a very beautiful kind of watercolor effect if you want. I don't do representational, but you could probably do sort of landscape sort of things as well. I'll turn you around and you can see what I'm up to with that. So this is my setup. I'm going to do it dry as well as wet. And so we're going to cover both techniques. I'm also going to show you the Inktense blocks versus the water-soluble. I have these. I believe they're the same as this. They're just really old. These are from Pearl Paint, which no longer exists, over on Canal Street here in New York City, which tells me that I bought these probably when I was a student at Parsons, so 40 years, almost 40, yeah, 45 years ago. All right, so I'll get started. The other thing I have, which is really important, is this spray bottle and some water, because I need to dip my either fabric or crayons into the water. So I'm going to start with these. These are the ones that you can get. I'm going to post the link below, but these are the ones that you can get. They're readily available. You can get them from Amazon or wherever. All right, so let's just take a little bit of cheesecloth. The first thing I can do is I can dip this whole thing into my water, right? And then you just want to kind of squeeze the water out so it's not completely soaking wet. And then what you can do is you can start painting. Let's say I want to do blues and greens, right? So I can get a little bit of the blue in here. This is a little bit of a more, whatever. This is going more into purple. Let's do some navy. Okay, now I can squirt this, and what's going to happen is it can start to bleed, right? So now I can add a little more of this. I can add some of this. Now we're going more into the greens. I can go into, add some of this. If you have something specific you're working on, then that'll give you a very definite idea of what colors you want and how big of a piece you want to do it. If you're just sort of doing like just a general bit of cloth that you want to be able to use at some point, but you don't have anything specific in mind, just go with colors that you like. Okay. So I'm going to add some of the green in here. Now maybe I want just a little bit of orange in here somewhere. Maybe I want a little more sort of this kind of an autumnal feel to it. Okay, so now you can even dip the water, just really get it out there. Sop it up with your cloth. And this can get as intense or as faded as you want. If you want it more intense, don't dilute it, you know? Just let it sit. If you want it more intense, less intense, more of a watercolor like this, then do what I'm doing. But it can be a very organic process. It can also be a much more exacting process if you want it to be. You know, don't spray it if you want more defined lines. You can also do this on dry, which I'll show you in a second, and also, and then once from the dry, you can spray it as well, or not. Another thing you can do is you can dip the Caran right into the water and then put it on, and that gives you a different effect entirely. It's especially if you're doing it wet on wet, so you dip this onto a damp, which this is, cloth. Another technique is to sort of do this to the fabric so that you're getting kind of a pleated effect, and then go over it and you get this kind of intense liquid. And if you spray it, then you can go in with other colors if you want. Another way to do this is to scrunch it all up and just to start kind of going with different colors. Now you can spray the whole thing. You're going to get kind of a more mottled, right? So this more intense, I haven't sprayed it. Some of it I have, but a lot of it I haven't. This where I kind of showed you before. Another thing is, if you don't like something that you've done, so let's say I don't know, let's say I put a big thing of this in, and I think, well, that's just like way too much. I can go over it with another color. You don't have to worry. You can also, you know, put water on it to dilute it and then go over with another color. But you don't have to stick with anything that you don't like. This is all on wet, so I'm going to now show you on dry. All right, I'm doing this on dry. This I also use to kind of mop up some of the stuff, so this actually is wet, but this is dry. And I'm just doing this really quickly. I'm not thinking about it. I don't have any preconceived notion of what I'm doing. I'm just doing this purely for demonstration purposes. But you can see that there's just an awful lot one can do. So let's say I don't like the intensity of that, I can go over it, right? I can use my spray bottle when I want to dilute it a little, or I can just leave it raw. If you're drawing something more representational, or you have a landscape or something, you just wouldn't, you don't have to wet it. All right, this is a piece of t-shirting. T-shirting is a little bit, this is an old t-shirt that I, you can see it's kind of a little see-through, and my younger days. So the thing about, this is dry, and the thing about t-shirting, of course, is that it's, you know, it's stretches, so it's a little bit harder to apply, but you can still get some really interesting textures, colors, and what I love about this t-shirt is that it's got texture in it, which is really cool. And so when I dye it, I'm still getting, you know, that texture's coming through, which I really like. For t-shirting, I actually prefer doing it wet, just because it does stretch and it kind of gets away from you. But I wanted to show you what it looks like doing it dry, and then if I spray it, you know, I can get these kind of striations. If it's wet, I'm not as likely to get those cool striations, but I'll show you. So I'll spray it really well so that it's completely wet here. So this is really, really wet. You can see the moisture on the table. And now I'll go in, and you can see how different it is as I apply the Caran to it. Right? So you can see it's just a little bit different. When I do it dry, I'm getting these kind of cool striations. When I do it wet, it just sort of blends all in. Okay, so here it is, and it's still a little damp, but you can really see the difference between the dry versus the wet, right? So this is on that cloth. And you can iron this and heat set it. When I called Caran, I emailed Caran and asked them about heat setting. They said you don't have to, but you know, if you just want to make sure, you can heat set it. And then this one is totally dry, and you can see that as it dried, it also faded. But it's still really pretty. This is what the Inktense looks like. They're just come in sort of blocks. It's basically the sort of a very, very similar idea as the Caran. I'm just going to do something sort of here. We'll do it dry first. So again, it's, you know, it is difficult because it's so stretchy, but let's see, what else can I do in here? Just keep it to sort of purples and browns. Remember, I'm doing this dry. Now again, you can also wet this, right? So just wet it, and it's a very different feel to it. It's very gummy. You can see how it's really coming off on my fingers. All right, so that's that. I'm going to show you what happens now when I wet it, right? So I'm just going to spray it. Just kind of blends things in a little bit more, but you're still getting that kind of textural feel to it. All right, so now I'm going to wet this so that we're not doing it on dry, we're doing it on wet, right? You can see how wet that is. And let's try some sort of olives into kind of a that's another thing, you know, remember you can create texture by bunching it up or just doing what I'm doing where you're just kind of gliding it over. These will mix in with each other, especially if you wet the fabric. Okay, let's see about doing something. This. Okay, so you can see the possibilities here, right? So there it is, both with the Inktense, which is a little bit messier, and the Caran, and doing both dry, and then spraying, and then wet. And you can see the wet gets blurry, the dry, and then you can spray it or not spray it, and you get more of these striations. And it's really just, you know, whatever you feel like, and play and see what happens. But it's a lot of fun. You can do it with any kind of material. Have fun.